Welcome to Independence Nation on the Light of Life Network. I'm Keith Pitts. Now today we're going to talk about someone in the news who has been fighting for land use, and his name is Cliven Bundy. Go ahead, cue the picture. Cliven Bundy is a rancher in Nevada, and he has been fighting the BLM, the Bureau of Land Management. Now, I had a whole spiel to go through today, but of course, this confrontation has ended, at least for now, as the BLM has backed out. They had their guns drawn on Cliven Bundy and his supporters, and they backed out instead of ensuing or being a part of an overall confrontation that could have turned bloody. Could have turned seriously bloody. So let's go into exactly what was going on here, and I have limited notes with me. As I said, I had a much longer presentation to give you, and I decided to shorten it because for now this conflict is over. But some breaking news of Harry Reid saying it's not over, that some more action will be taken. So let's go into a little bit about what's going on. So Cliven Bundy has been using the land for his cattle. He's a rancher, as I said. He's been using the land for his cattle for many years. As a matter of fact, his forefathers used the land, and they have grazing rights and water rights to the land. As a matter of fact, it was his family that planted the water system to flow through the land. The water, I believe they call them ducts, but he and his family have used the land for several years, and as a rancher on the land, has been a vital part of its upkeep. So in 1993 there was a law enacted saying that the state or the actual state could take over the land, and that there were grazing fees that had to be paid. But once again, his family was basically grandfathered in to grazing and water rights on the land, and that he was willing to fight. He was willing to fight, and at first he was alone with him and his family, and they were suffering several abuses as the federal government were beating up his family, taking him to the ground, arrested him, then letting them go, setting up snipers to eye his family, which I don't understand why there would be a use of snipers in the whole situation. But the federal government, the Bureau of Land Management, set up snipers. Only time a federal agency sets up snipers is when they fear that they're going to have to use them. And I don't know what gave him those fears, except that he stood his ground, went to court several times. It's reported that when he was winning in court, the BLM simply stood up, said, "Hey, you don't have the rights over us," being the federal government, and they walked out of the courtroom. So he had been fighting for several years to maintain his grazing and water rights on the land, and the federal government came in and took his cattle. Now, let's take a look at the farming industry for a second. As it relates to today, the farming industry and the ranching industry is basically gone away because of the federal government taking over lands. And this wasn't a situation of eminent domain, but they just simply stated that, hey, we enacted laws in 1993 although you've been using the lands before that time and before this era, we're going to go ahead and put to you these grazing grazing taxes on you and your cattle. So they rounded up his cattle. They took his cattle from him, and I have to say I like the way that he approached the issue. He himself did not approach the issue with arming himself and simply taking this full-scale escalation. He simply at first went to court and he stood alone with his family. And then this man must have someone watching over him. The man upstairs, Yahovah is what I like to call him. But all of a sudden, he began to take the approach of the media. And yes, what people used to call the alternative media, which is now the mainstream, the mainline media that everyone listens to. Just like here on Independence Nation and the Light of Life Network. But he decided he was going to fight back in word. And so he went to several different places and got the word out of what was going on. And this is how you fight the federal government. This is how you fight abuses. You talk about it and you gain supporters, and that's what he did. Now his supporters showed up, and what the BLM tried to do was put those people in a what they call a First Amendment zone, so they could exercise their First Amendment right in a small zone that was away from the protest. There was a protest away from Cliven Bundy and his family. But the governor spoke up. The governor of Nevada spoke up that the zone shouldn't be there. They had to take down the zone, and the supporters were able to hands-on back Cliven Bundy and his family. I love that many of the people around this great nation went out to support Cliven Bundy. And let me tell you, it wasn't just the support of friends and family, those who know and love him, but those who fell in love with his story, as such as myself, and his tenacity to fight this horrendous situation of taking away this man's livelihood, because I know all about that. Right now they're trying to stop Light of Life's Patmos University. As many of you know, I am the president of Light of Life, and they're trying to do the same thing to me, take away my livelihood, and that's what they did to Cliven Bundy. They tried to take away his livelihood by taking away 400 head of cattle that were grazing on the land. And so the supporters showed up, and not just any supporters, but the militia. And my hat's off to the militia, because they made the fight fair. And it is my personal thought that the BLM backed out because the militia were present, they had their guns, and they were willing to fight for Cliven Bundy. My hat once again is off to the militia for fighting for an upstanding citizen of this great nation. And so on the weekend, as it occurred, as many of us weren't paying attention to the news, the BLM were faced with an onslaught of supporters, of Cliven Bundy supporters, that pressed their gates and said, hey, we're going to get this cattle whether you like it or not. And the BLM knew that they were outnumbered, and hey, the BLM, the feds had their snipers, and the militia had theirs as well. And it could have turned into a bloody situation, but the Bundy supporters remained peaceful. And I have to say the BLM did as well, but could it be because they knew there was no possible way to win? There was no possible way to win against the militia, which had surrounded the areas, the border of the areas, the mountaintops, and just as they were eyeing Cliven Bundy and had him in their scope, well, the militia had the BLM in theirs as well. But it's good to see that the situation did not escalate, but they in fact de-escalated the situation and left. Now, this is an article here concerning what has occurred so far and what occurred here on the weekend. I'm going to read a few excerpts of the article. And the article reads, Nevada rancher Cliven Bundy, the citizens of America got my cattle back. And that's exactly what happened as the BLM left. They released the cattle, and those citizens, those supporters, all of us backing Cliven Bundy, believing in who he is. This is a man seems to be, in my opinion, a sweetheart of a person and someone that God has watched over to de-escalate the situation, because they could have harmed this man before the militia got there, but the supporters were out there protesting. The militia came in, and the BLM turned tail and left. So here's the article. Federal land managers say escalating tensions led them to release all 400 head of cattle rounded up on public land in southern Nevada from a rancher who has refused to recognize their authority. The rancher at the center of the dispute said it was the citizens of America that brought the standoff to an end. The Bureau of Land Management Chief Neil Corns announced an abrupt halt to the week-long roundup just hours before the release. Hundreds of states' rights protesters, including militia members, showed up at corrals outside Mesquite to demand the animals return to rancher Cliven Bundy. Some protesters were armed with handguns and rifles at the corrals and at an earlier nearby rally. Bundy told CBS affiliate KLAS in Nevada that it was his protest and his supporters that concluded the standoff. There is no deal here. The citizens of America in Clark County went and took their cattle. There was no negotiations. They took these cattle, Bundy said. Now, just a couple more excerpts here, because as I said, the cattle were released. The BLM initially tried to trick Bundy, Cliven Bundy and his sons to come and get the cattle, in my opinion, to basically get them by themselves so they can arrest him. But as one of his sons spoke up, and I think his name was Ammon Bundy, spoke up and said, no, you just leave. We'll get the cattle. We'll go get the cattle. You just leave. And that was very wise on his part. And as I said, the BLM turned tail and left. Now, the fight between Bundy and the Bureau of Land Management widened into a debate about states' rights and federal land use policy. The dispute that ultimately triggered the roundup dates to 1993, as I previously stated, when the Bureau cited concern for the federally protected tortoise in the region. Now, this is the funny part, is that they said that his cattle, the Cliven Bundy's cattle, were possibly endangering this Nevada tortoise. So they were willing to put snipers up on the hill to eye Cliven Bundy and his family to kill a human being over possibly endangering a tortoise. Unbelievable, isn't it? So let me go ahead and read the end of this. The dispute is over. The BLM is leaving, but emotions and tensions are still near the boiling point, and we desperately need a peaceful conclusion to this conflict, U.S. Senator Dean Heller said in a statement. I urge all the people involved to please return to your homes and allow the BLM officers to collect their equipment and depart without interference. Now, we received some comments concerning this situation. I just want to read a couple of these. It says here from Ron Paul 2112, the feds are acting now because 10 years ago they did not have lease deals or know about the oil and gas on the land. BLM are thieves. So if you don't know, all of this information led back to Harry Reid. Now, Harry Reid had been trying to negotiate what they call a solar farm, a Chinese solar farm, and so he wanted this land. And that's where all of this information led back to, as the BLM head man, Corns, was previously on Harry Reid's administration. And so he has his buoy in place, and he wants this land he wants Cliven Bundy to be off the land. And so he gives a phone call to Corns to get Bundy off the land and to do anything he could do, and so he could come in with this Chinese solar farm. So, another comment of Buriti Joe. Bundy doesn't believe he has to pay to a federal system because it is state land. The bill came from the feds, not the state. Look up the issues yourself. Don't be a follower and expect people to educate you. More importantly, this is a classic government cover-up. They want to close Americans' access to our own land, work the land for weapons, process it. Article 21 issue. This is Article 21 issue, he states. The government would just as soon take all of our land and make you and me renters. You have Americans who fight for what is right, and then you have Americans who expect to be taken care of by the government. We all know about those. I can see many of the latter in this thread, as opponent of the thread says, "What is with you freaks about Article 21? It isn't going to happen, Beatty. Regardless of how much hysteria your buddies exhibit over the Obama administration. Dementedly shrieking that something is going to happen doesn't make it real. Get over it already. The UN is not going to swoop in and take your six-pack of Keystone Light." I don't think he's worried about a six-pack of Keystone Light, but I have to say that Buriti has a viable argument in saying that this is Article 21, and they're taking over land. So, as I stated, that this situation has de-escalated, the BLM has left, but Harry Reid says it's not over, and I agree, it's probably not over because, and as you can see from government, they don't take defeat very well, and so as Harry Reid had a smug look on his face and a you know what type of grin, and he said it's not over. He wants this land, and he'll do anything he can do to get it. So this is Keith Pitts for iNation News. I hope this has been informative. Support Cliven Bundy. If you see his views, as I do, that he's just trying to take care of his family with a declining form of employment or a way of taking care of his family. Being a rancher has declined over the years. There are many ranchers that I think he said there were 53 in his area, and there are very few now because they've taken the land and put people out of the ranching business. I'm urging you to support Cliven Bundy. And as the BLM returns, I urge you to phone your representatives. Let them know that you are in support of Cliven Bundy and that there needs to be further laws. Any law that has ever been enacted has been enacted with grandfather rights. And so Cliven Bundy would be accessible to grandfather rights, as they, for some reason, didn't make grandfather laws accessible in what they enacted in 1993. But once again, I'm Keith Pitts. I got to get out of here. I didn't mean to talk this long. It's only almost been a 20-minute talk here. But support Cliven Bundy. I'm Keith Pitts for Independence Nation. I'll see you next time.